Welcome back to Season 3 of Altea Talks, the podcast from Altea, where we bring real-world insights for professionals working in the medical, allied health and care sectors, and for those who work alongside them. I'm your host, Will Marshall, and this season I'll be chatting with some truly exceptional guests, recognised leaders who are shaping thinking at the very top of their respective fields. Together, we'll have open, entertaining and informed conversations as we try to get to the heart of the biggest challenges and emerging issues shaping health and social care today, delivering the expert thinking, insights and thought leadership that you need to stay ahead. So if you're looking for frontline knowledge and expertise, if you want valued insights into these most dynamic, challenging and rewarding of sectors, then look no further, because you're in the right place. Welcome again to Altea Talks. Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Altea Talks. I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr Rob Lawson. Rob qualified in medicine in 1975 and gained extensive experience as a family doctor in Scotland. His principal interests have been primary and secondary prevention of disease and the discipline of lifestyle medicine, which is what we're going to be talking about today. As well as leading his NHS team to the highest awards for quality, Rob founded a charity in 1991 providing weekly activity and support in venues around the county of East Lothian for people living with long-term conditions including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, lung disease and frailty. He's now retired from clinical practice but concentrates on the applications of lifestyle medicine into healthcare. In 2016, Rob co-founded the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, BSLM, a registered charity. The purpose of that was to promote the principles of lifestyle medicine to healthcare professionals and the public. Rob serves as chairman of the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, president of the European Lifestyle Medicine Council, and as vice president of the Mediterranean Lifestyle Medicine Institute. He is a member of the executive committee of the World Lifestyle Medicine Organization. Rob, a very warm welcome to Altea Talks.
Well, thank you very much for coming all the way up to Scotland, Will.
It's an absolute pleasure to be in Scotland as always, and thank you again for agreeing to appear on the podcast. As I said in my intro, we're going to be concentrating on lifestyle medicine in this conversation, and I think probably the opening question for you, Rob, is how would you define lifestyle medicine in simple terms, and how is it different from traditional medical approaches?
Well, generally speaking, if patients want to speak to me about this, I would say, well, it's not really about doing something completely different. It's about doing basics really well. So lifestyle medicine for me really is about everyday habits, what we eat, how we move, how we sleep as part of management and treatment. So it's not instead of conventional medicine, but it works alongside it. And one of the things I've noted when speaking to people around the country and abroad is a useful analogy that if you think of a dripping tap into a basin and it gradually fills up and then the water spills over onto the ground around it, the healthcare workers generally are there mopping up the water and no one's actually turning off the tap or taking the plug out of the sink. And I like to see that that's what lifestyle medicine is. It's turning off the tap and lifting out the plug and letting the water go out. It's a very positive, it's a very optimistic way to practice and very effective. So I think that lifetime medicine is bringing something which a lot of our patients and a lot of our members just love. And it's a question of, well, why doesn't everybody do it?
Thank you. It's lifestyle medicine's often described as being built around several key pillars, such as nutrition, physical activity, sleep, stress management, social connection, and avoiding harmful substances. Why are those areas so central to health?
Well, I think it's because they're fundamental. And in practice, you can see it happening, as many of our clinicians will know. That someone improves their sleep or starts moving a bit more, and suddenly multiple things are beginning to shift, affecting not just one condition. And I've seen this many times, and I call it the domino effect, not just to the individual, but to families. Because if you start influencing an individual who wants to change, then the families are drawn in as well. So it's a bit like throwing a pebble into a pond. It has ripples that go outwards, and these little changes all add up to a big change. So it's very fundamental. And I have to say that we have to bear in mind that lifestyle medicine has been around for a long time. I mean, if you go back to, people talk a lot about Hippocrates in our world as being the father of medicine and so on, but it goes back further. I mean, the ancient Egyptians. It goes back to the Persians, Ibn Balsad, for example. We go back to traditional Chinese medicine. We go back to Ayurvedic medicine in India. But to cap it all, we go back 30,000 years, and we're going to the indigenous population of Australia. So I think that it is not new, but it seems to have taken an awful long time to get full acceptance and get it embedded into our way of life.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that fascinating trip back in time for 30,000 years. When we look at the big picture of health today, chronic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity seem to be increasingly prevalent. A couple of questions on that. First, what do you think is driving that rise? And secondly, how much of this rise in chronic diseases is linked, in your view, to the way that we live? Things like diet, movement, sleep, stress, and the wider environment that we live in.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that you've mentioned the pillars of lifestyle medicine one by one. But in terms of what's driving that rise, it's, in my view, a mismatch really between how we're designed to live and the environment in which we actually live. That we clearly have not adapted to life as quickly as we should have in order to put up with the conditions that we've brought to bear. We're in an Anthropocene era now, and we've got a lot to answer for, in my view. I mean, we've built an environment where the easiest option is often the least healthy option to take. And added to that is the issue of poverty and accessibility, and the larger division between the haves and have-nots simply getting bigger. So we've got a lot of work to do, and it's not actually about willpower or blame. It's about the context in which we lived. We've created this environment which contributes towards this, what we call inflammatory state. So in terms of physiology, this metabolic inflammation. And there was a person called Gökhan Hotamishligil in Harvard who first raised the evidence of inflammation in our bodies and what causes them. We're used to understanding that infectious disease is powered by an organism, an infection. And if you think in terms of a sore throat, for example, you get that burning sense in your throat. That's us responding to this assault from the bacteria or virus or whatever. So you're aware of that burning throat, but then you get back to homeostasis, you get back to normal. The immune system kicks in and all settles. With chronic disease, it never quite settles. So you've got these, instead of a burning sore throat, you've got sort of burning embers that are just under the surface that aren't visible, that are working away the whole time. And the assault is caused by what my colleague Gary Egger in Australia called anthropogens, things that were contributing towards this inflammatory state. And all of the things you've just mentioned in terms of the pillars of lifestyle medicine contribute in an unhealthy way to this driver of chronic disease. You asked to what extent are these pillars responsible? Well, the answer is a very large proportion. I mean, we see it all the time, day to day in the clinic. The rise in the non-communicable diseases, as we call them, essentially has been caused mainly by socioeconomic commercial, environmental reasons. And if we ignore all of that, then we're kind of only firefighting. And so part of lifestyle medicine is acknowledging the upstream causes, which include poverty and so on, and the living circumstances, the lived environment. But you do see patterns, people struggling with similar issues around diet and inactivity and sleep and so on. And these patients, there has to be a willingness to change, and we're here to try and support that change. We're not here to force a change or blame anybody. We're just simply to support that change when they're ready.
Thank you. And I think one of the things I take from that is that healthcare systems may be very good at treating diseases, but lifestyle medicine focuses much more on prevention. How big is the opportunity to prevent illness rather than just manage it once it develops?
That's a very good question. It's one of the most striking things, actually, because so much of what we're dealing with develops over time, and sometimes decades. And that means that there's a long window of opportunity, if you like, to influence that ultimate trajectory into a disease state. You'd think that COVID might have concentrated minds a bit, but the question is, why did so many people succumb to the virus? And that had come back to our body simply not adapting to 21st century living as to the cause of that. So the answer to your question is, it is something that we can make a big impact on. It's one that takes time, so we don't have quick fixes. But on the other hand, we regularly see an intervention from a practitioner, which may seem trivial, but then triggers off, as I said earlier, into something big. So we've got a big role to play.
Yeah, sure. Can you just tell me a little bit about the scale of the issue, really? I mean, globally, I think I read the World Health Organization stat that non-communicable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer account for around 70% of deaths. When you hear a figure like that, I mean, what does it tell us about the size of the challenge that we're all facing?
It's quite sobering, isn't it? 41 million annually die prematurely and mainly under the age of 70. So poverty, health inequality is part of that growing problem. And one thing that bothers me a lot as a grandparent, the gap of healthy life expectancy and life expectancy now is really quite wide. And depending on where you live, also there's a big disparity. But a 5-year-old child born today has a lesser healthy life expectancy than his parents. And that's the first time ever. And in fact, I think that's a terrible legacy from my generation. And it is a driver for all the enthusiasm within the lifestyle medicine movement too, that eye into the future and how we can make a difference.
Can I just ask you there, were you talking about healthy life expectancy as opposed to life expectancy? For the benefit of the listeners, if you could just perhaps explain that very important distinction.
The gap, it can be up to 20 years between living healthily, living well, living healthily, and then spending 20 years living unhealthily until you die. So what we concentrate on is on the health span rather than lifespan. The reality is that most of our 95% of our population live with a particular modifiable risk factor. Or at least 60% now are living with at least one chronic condition. So it's a big number. But these can be managed and reversed if done, with in a sort of shared decision-making way along with our patient, co-creating solutions for patients and clients. As I said, I think it is shocking what is happening. One of the other shocks, to be honest, has to be the impact of the medical profession. Iatrogenic disease, that is disease caused by doctors, is the third biggest killer in the United States, and probably here too in the UK. And it costs a fortune, hospitalization, because of overdiagnosis, overtreatment, pharmacological side effects, and so on and so forth. There's a book which had a huge impact on me. It's called Peter Goethe, who's the head of the Cochrane Collaboration, Nordic Cochrane Collaboration. It's called Deadly Medicines and Organized Crime. I read that squirming in my seat thinking, I've been prescribing these drugs to my patients and believing that I'm doing something good, and finding, in fact, that most drugs don't work in most people. So I think that what lifestyle medicine brings is that safety element. It's like a liberation. That the low risk, low tech, and very effective, and bringing smiles to patients' faces as well as doctors' faces. So it's just a marvelous way to work.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, and it's interesting to hear you speak about that, and also slightly terrifying to hear you speak about the scale of the problem. So let's talk a little bit about the rise of lifestyle medicine, if you like. We seem to be hearing more and more about lifestyle medicine, or certainly about the key pillars that constitute lifestyle medicine, and it seems to be I hope I'm right in saying this, a growing awareness that this is a very effective way of managing chronic conditions and preventing them from happening in the first place. Can you explain in what directions, in your experience, you're seeing the field of lifestyle medicine growing, and where perhaps you see it gaining most traction in practice, whether it's in clinical care or in medical education, public health, or maybe a combination of all of these?
It is, I think, happening in an organic way in all of these three areas. But although clinicians are using it more now in consultations, and students are asking about training it for training in medical school and other nursing school and so on, what's interesting is that patients are increasingly curious about themselves and about how they can influence their own health. And self-care is another of these little trigger points. Sir Muir Gray has tried to explain what self-care is about, but worldwide now there's an appreciation that self-care is important, and we have to provide the conditions where people can care for themselves. There's one occasion, not in my practice, but what a doctor was talking to somebody suffering from rheumatoid or living with rheumatoid arthritis, and he said, "Well, I think such and such." And she said, "You can think what you like, doctor. I see you for 1% of my life. I live with this 900% of my life." So in other words, I want to be involved in the decision making. And I think that's a greater appreciation now that we, as doctors, can step off our pedestals and get down to the level of our patients and really share decision-making, understand and support where it matters to the patient. And that's where lifestyle medicine sits. It's what matters to the patient.
Thank you. And presumably lifestyle medicine as well is evidence-led to a large degree. Can you explain what developments in research or healthcare thinking have helped lifestyle medicine gain more attention and traction in recent years?
Most of the research is difficult to do. We can't do randomized controlled trials on lifestyle issues. And that's where we come in for criticism. You cannot have randomized controlled trials. There was no randomized controlled trials on people jumping out of airplanes with parachutes. It's quite obvious what was going to happen. And I think that lifestyle medicine finds itself largely in that place. That we know that physical activity and lack of physical inactivity is helpful. We know that sleep's important even more than ever before. We know that social connectedness and healthy relationships, in fact, possibly is the most important of the pillars. To nowadays, increasingly, the population, and not just the elderly, are increasingly socially isolated. They're suffering from mental health problems. So I think that as clinicians, I see our job as architects of choice, and not somebody saying, you must do this. Telling somebody to eat less or exercise more, we know just simply doesn't work. And the fact that patients now are saying, well, what else can I do, is hugely important. One of the areas of research I'd like to see is exploring the best ways to be able to get across a message of benefits of a certain intervention, what the risks are associated with that intervention, what the alternatives are, and what if you do nothing. So that element of risk, in which I suspect you must be quite interested, is actually very, very difficult to transmit and understand. So I think that that's a huge area that we need to work on. In terms of research, other research. It is important that we continue to do so. It isn't something that attracts funding, but ultimately the research will have to show that any intervention has been effective and impactful. So it's that end of the research, I think, that matters, because then the policymakers will understand better that if there's money to be saved, maybe we should be interested.
Yes, thank you. And I think that leads us on to the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, and I'd like to ask you firstly about the founding of BSLM, the creation of BSLM. You co-founded the BSLM in 2016. What was happening at that time that led to you creating the organisation?
I think there was a recognition after a lifetime in general practice that there was a heavy dependence on prescribing, and also a greater understanding of its lack of effectiveness. And so that sort of general dissatisfaction, if you like, was enough to make you think, well, there are other ways of doing this. I had the experience of the charity to work on and knowing the benefits. And so a colleague, Michael Boyle from Sheffield, and Lawrence Stewart, a surgeon from Edinburgh, said, look, let's do something about this. There's this general sense of dissatisfaction. Let's get together. And there must be other people out there who think the same. Let's try and develop a charity and attract people in, and recognize that there is another way of approaching medicine, and that holistic approach using a biopsychosocial model was clearly the best way forward. And so the three of us got together, and I set up the charity. One of the things that generally when I speak to medics in particular is I ask them, in terms of their education and what their expectations were as a practitioner, where they sat on the disease wellness continuum. And I always felt that it should be across the whole continuum, disease right the way through to wellness. But we're taught only at the disease end of the spectrum. And so there's clearly there a need. And BSLM grew out of that need to bring people together, give it a bit more shape, if you like. And it was my friendship with Professor Gary Egger in Australia and his scope of lifestyle medicine, the scale of lifestyle medicine, his approach to lifestyle medicine, which really was very, very attractive. And so we decided, let's go for it. And that's what got us all fired up.
When BSLM was first established, what were the main aims and ambitions that you had for the organisation? I'm thinking in terms of what you were just saying there about really doctors being involved throughout the whole scale, from wellness to disease, or the other way around, rather than just at the disease end of that spectrum.
Well, the principal way to deal with that is education. So one of the approaches, one of the fundamentals really was in education. So we needed to get our members qualified in lifestyle medicine, which meant setting up a learning academy. And I'm pleased to say that we've got now a learning academy which is producing many, many courses, not just the core accreditation, which is a qualification, but it's very active. So that was important. The community aspect, not just within the charity, but the community out there, the interface with the community, the patients, our neighborhoods, hugely important. And then the influence and advocacy side of life, that we had to be able to try to get to the point where we could influence the policymakers. We could advocate generally for a different approach, and a very safe approach, and a very effective approach, and a very cheap approach. So all of these things were the aim. And later on, of course, the business development side of it came in. How do we develop the business? Because clearly we had to find the income to keep it going. So that's pretty much, it was this sort of raising awareness was the first step, and then support education, build the community, and so on.
Yeah, and how receptive were the people or the sectors you were looking to engage with to the idea of lifestyle medicine and the thinking behind it? I'm thinking of the clinicians and the patients.
I think the patients were getting it earlier than the clinicians. And actually, students also really do get it and did get it. But increasingly, because of the increased pressures, I think, that clinicians feel under, a large number, I suspect, of our membership have been through some sort of life-changing event in some way. They've used lifestyle medicine themselves, seen the benefit, and then want to then use it in their professional lives to improve the lives of their patients. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, I think.
Yeah, sure. And lifestyle medicine is now established globally. You yourself are president of the European Lifestyle Medicine Council, vice president of the Mediterranean Lifestyle Medicine Institute, a member of the executive committee of the World Lifestyle Medicine Organization. Could you just explain how you and your colleagues at BSLM connect with the wider international community of lifestyle medicine organizations, and maybe give us some examples of how this collaboration has benefited BSLM members and patients, and vice versa?
Again, a very good question. I mean, one of the strengths of lifestyle medicine is how collaborative it is internationally. The European Lifestyle Medicine Council of 28 countries, we have people volunteer to this council. There's task groups, research and policy, for example. The World Lifestyle Medicine Organization has 48 countries, national societies around the world, all over the world, soon to be 50, I understand. And their task forces are in research, international development, education, social media and communication, and even fundraising. So there's a lot of sharing of ideas, sharing of research, sharing of various approaches, finding out what best practice is around the world. There are some very amazing implementations around the world. The degree of involvement of governments in different parts of the world, not in ours, is eye-opening. And in terms of our members, they have the advantage of coming to our conference and having international speakers from these various organizations and getting an understanding that they're not alone. This is a worldwide movement. And that kind of makes people feel good, that this is something that's bigger than just Britain. Well, some of the most important developments really are in education. And we have been described as having the gold standard of education in lifestyle medicine. And although it began in the USA, it's been refined by the BSLM at home and abroad. So setting the standard is hugely important. And our members know that, and they're very happy then to join up and sit the core accreditation qualification and be that qualified lifestyle medicine practitioner or physician. So the international bit is important. And I suspect, because we're the second biggest organization in the world after the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, we were expected really to be leading in this. And so maybe our members don't feel they got as much out of it as other countries. But nonetheless, that sort of cross-fertilization between cultures, between different countries, just makes a point. People are the same, but the cultures are different, health systems are different, and how you go about confronting the same problem is different in different areas of the world. So I think it's been educational for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned there about the accredited courses that BSLM provide, and obviously one of the key roles is to support practitioners to apply lifestyle medicine in real world settings. Can you just expand a little bit on the types of training or resources that BSLM offers to help professionals, both on the regulated professionals and the unregulated professionals, to develop those skills?
Yes, that's again a very good question, and we try to make it as practical as possible. And although we started with clinicians, physicians, we're now concentrating a little bit more on the, as you say, the non-regulated areas, because lifestyle medicine is essentially a team approach. There's no one person that can be a lifestyle medicine specialist in our view. It has to be a team approach. And clearly, patients and clients have to get the same message. It has to be the same evidence-driven message and not myths that are out there. So as far as what's available, there's a training that you referred to, the Alzheimer's core accreditation for clinicians and non-clinicians, and CPD offerings. I think there are about 19 different courses that we offer. We have the annual conference. We have webinars monthly. We have regional WhatsApp groups. We have special interest groups, but also have a multitude of tools that clinicians and allied health professionals can use actually in consultations. And they're on our website, to which members have access. Because translating theory into practice is often the difficult bit. And that's what we try to provide, that bringing theory into practice.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things that is really fascinating, I think, about this is the multidisciplinary approach, but not just between different professionals, but also engaging with patients and with the wider public. Can you share with us how some of the ways that the BSLM brings together all of those different strands?
Well, I think that the fact that the membership is across disciplines, it's not just one. It includes non-physicians, it includes students, it includes people in education. So our family, if you like, is disparate. But having just said that there's no one single professional, if you like, that can deliver on all lifestyle medicine, there is a mechanism, there is a tool that we use in lifestyle medicine, which kind of brings it together. And that's something called group consultations, that we were all taught and brought up and consulted on a one-to-one basis. That was brought in effectively for another era. It was when infectious disease was a problem. And so it made sense to separate people. But actually, people learn best when they're in a group. And so group consultations effectively joins that clinical approach with the educational approach. Both have to happen in group consultations. And in that arena, not only is there increased potentially productivity within the health system, it brings together a team. You have a scribe, a member of your staff. You can have an invited pharmacist. You can have an invited physiotherapist. You can have a diabetologist. You can have practice nurse. Exercise physiologist, psychologist. They can be in the room along with the clinician who is dealing with each patient. As you maybe have 12 people in a room, and you go from one to the next. And what you find is, it should be no surprise, is that change, which is what this is all about, happens more likely when the change is stimulated by a peer within that group. Nothing to do with the health professional in the room. That's quite sobering too. The beauty about group consultations is that we're all on one level. There's no pedestals, and there's no computer a screen between me and the patients. You're sitting in a circle. You're all together, and that patients like. Some of the most amazing things have happened, which would never have happened in a one-to-one. It really beats me why it hasn't taken off to a greater degree. It is happening, but it's not been adopted around the system wholly, and it's been slightly misunderstood as well. So I think that in terms of getting people together, that is one way that we can achieve that. And who's been in a supermarket queue, as I have often, and hearing patients talking about their health conditions in public? So why would people be worried about coming into a group consultation and data protection and confidentiality? Yeah, they sign a waiver, that's fine. But people will say the most amazing things in front of other people, and as a consequence, learn a lot and change a lot. So I would say that if we want to break down the silos which exist in our health system, group consultations are the way to go.
That's fascinating. Thank you. And I think you did touch there on confidentiality, and I think you mentioned GDPR, but if not, I have. And I do think that's quite a neat way, really, of bringing it round to have a look at some of the, if you like, the sort of the drier aspects of it, and thinking about the legal regulatory and professional considerations. Could you summarize for me what you consider to be the key professional considerations that lifestyle practitioners should keep in mind in terms of evidence-based practice, regulation, indemnity insurance, those sorts of things?
Well, it's a fairly short answer because in many ways it's simply about applying the same principles as you would anywhere else. You work within your scope, you stay evidence-based, and you practice responsibly. I think some people see lifestyle medicine as something separate or different, but actually it sits firmly within good clinical practice. So from that respect, it's no different from any other.
Thank you. And I think you mentioned to me previously, before we started recording, that there are increasing numbers of clinical practitioners who are enthusiastic about moving on into lifestyle medicine and practicing lifestyle medicine. What practical steps would you suggest to help to ensure they're practicing safely and responsibly?
Well, join BSLM. Start with getting trained, connect with others, learn from others' experience, just work at it steadily. It's important to recognize you can't change everything overnight. So I think that neither for yourself or your patients. So I think that would be it. That speak with your peers who have done this before and get the confidence to be able to bring it into your practice.
Thank you. And I'd just add to that, for practitioners who are moving out of an exclusively NHS based role into setting up independently, then obviously they need to make sure that they've got appropriate indemnity insurance in place, which obviously is something that Altea is very close to our hearts, but also that they're complying with the regulatory responsibilities, CQC regulation and so on.
Yeah, I think quite a number of our members are doing precisely that. They're moving out of, if you like, the protection of the NHS into private world, and some are doing foot in both camps, and they have to do a lot of looking around to find companies that will indemnify them.
Yeah.
But the scope of activity is the key. The lifestyle medicine approach is, as I said before, low tech, very effective, doesn't cost much. You're not doing anything dangerous. You're not necessarily diagnosing anything. You're not prescribing anything, maybe, I don't know, vitamin D or something. So it's one of the areas that people have talked about is, why is it or how is it that doctors, even those who have been through lifestyle medicine qualifications, can give advice about nutrition? Nutritionists get up in arms and dietitians get up in arms. You're not qualified to talk about these. So I think, again, it's understanding the scope, knowing where your red lines are and that you mustn't and shouldn't cross. But a lot of it, arguably, is common sense. And that it's, as I've said before, it's such an optimistic way of practicing that people feel very comfortable doing it. It feels intuitively the right thing to be doing as a doctor or practitioner. And they enjoy what they do. I think that I've heard it, in conferences that we've run before, doctors coming up and saying, thank you so much for getting lifestyle medicine going, because, it's changed my life. I'm really enjoying general practice and what I do now. So there are people who are pretty jaded, people who are close to brownout or burnout, who have found lifestyle medicine, and it has changed their practice and their lives. So it's a very, very powerful weapon, if you like, in today's armamentarium against chronic disease.
I just got a couple of questions really to finish up on, Rob. Just really getting out my crystal ball here and looking ahead and talking about the future of lifestyle medicine. And I'd just like to ask you this: if we look ahead 5 years, how do you see lifestyle medicine evolving, and where do you see the biggest opportunities, and I would say as well, the biggest challenges for it to reach its full potential?
Again, a good question. None of us like to look into the future. My sense is that it will become less of a separate field and more an integrated field, integrated discipline into routine care. I think that increasingly it's going in that direction worldwide, not just here. So it's not something additional. It becomes part of what we do. In terms of opportunities, it's the opposite. It's two sides of a coin: opportunities and challenges. I think the opportunities are big. I think that there is a move towards personalization in the pharmaceutical world, for example. We're not anti-pharma, but we like to think lifestyle medicine first. But I think that if we get to the stage where in the next 5 years, people can have a personalized approach, not just in their lifestyle, coming from lifestyle medicine, but also any drugs that they need, I can see that might happen. We've got AI coming in. How's that going to impact? It can impact, I think, probably both sides of the coin. There's an opportunity and a threat. We've got the wearables that increasingly are coming in. Again, that I think see that more as an opportunity. We've got a big one at the moment, actually, which is management of obesity and the drugs that are being produced for that. On their own, they may well do harm or possibly do more harm than good. But alongside the principles of lifestyle medicine and having that sort of wraparound approach, then maybe we're going to make a difference in terms of the impact of obesity around the world. So those are big opportunities, and they have to be grasped. The challenges still remains, I think, lack of awareness, perhaps a little bit of resistance from conventional medicine, but I think gradually we'll whittle away at that. So I remain again completely optimistic about the future. I mean, the complexity of behavioral change and the fact that systems aren't always designed to support it is a problem. I think we can get over it. I think if you think back 5 years and where we are now, I'm not sure we would have known where we would have been. So I think looking forward 5 years from now is equally difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're certainly seeing now an increased awareness of the importance of prevention over cure, and we're seeing a recognition of that at government level. And certainly, if you look at the NHS plan moving care out of hospitals into the community, the importance of AI in helping people self-care, which I know is something that you've mentioned earlier as being enormously important. Those trends, those sort of broader trends, are already widely accepted, I would have thought.
The problem is they're not being implemented. I think talk is easy. I think, and also what's meant by prevention exactly. A lot of people will say, well, prevention is about vaccinations. You know, I remember speaking to the health minister in Scotland on one occasion. He said, well, how much do you spend on prevention? And all he could come up was with vaccinations. It's much, much wider than that. And the other cynical side of me thinks, well, moving from hospital to community is simply shifting the problem. It's not really tackling the problem. So I think I would love to see lifestyle medicine being picked up as being the exemplar, the solution to a problem which has been created by the 21st century. That would make me really pleased if that happened, but I'm not seeing much sign of it at the moment. But in principle, the fact that they're talking about it, good. The fact that they've not accepted any of our treaties to be involved in decision-making and policy-making, sad. But as I said, there are enough people, I think, in high places that get the message. I just hope that they speak to one another. My view, quite clearly, is that it's across every government department, every school, every hospital, every local government department. If you ask the question, what I'm suggesting, what impact will it have on human health? If they did that, and they were all asking that question, we wouldn't be where we are now. We'd be in a much better place.
And that brings me on to my final question, Rob. If there was one change that you would most like to see in how healthcare approaches prevention and lifestyle, what would it be?
That's a difficult pick, actually.
I'll give you 3.
I think we have to get lifestyle medicine. The emphasis has to be in getting lifestyle medicine within healthcare systems, but not just healthcare systems, into educational systems, and not just medical or hospital or whatever, but into schools as well. We have to start young. In fact, theoretically, Well, in practice, it would be nice to start preconceptually. That's how far back we have to go. If we want to have healthy children growing up into healthy adults, we have to start early. I mean, it is unforgivable, in my view, that when a newborn baby is born, you cut its cord, and within that blood, within the cord, you can get 200 forever chemicals, all of which can cause problems. So is it any surprising that so many of our young kids are getting problems which are completely avoidable? So I think that we've got a lot to do, but I still remain optimistic that more people, as they recognize what's happening in the world, they'll realize that they have to deal with the upstream determinants of health. We can do the bit of supporting people to change their behavior and support them in changing their lives. But unless the decisions are taken further up the line, we're just simply going to be firefighting, and we've got to change that.
Thank you. And I think we'll draw it to a close there. We could, I'm sure, carry on talking at length about this fascinating subject. It just remains for me to say thank you, Rob, for appearing on Altair Talks in this episode. It's been fascinating to talk to you about lifestyle medicine and about the opportunities and the optimism that those carry. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful, and thanks for coming to Scotland.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Altair Talks. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, as this helps spread the word. If you have any questions or comments or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, please do contact us, as we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on LinkedIn or visit our website at www.altairinsurance.com. Stay tuned for more episodes, and until next time, take care of yourselves. The information contained in this podcast is not intended to represent a complete analysis of the topics presented. It is provided for information purposes only for practitioners in the UK. It is not intended as legal advice, and no responsibility can be accepted by Altair or by the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine for any reliance placed upon it. Independent legal advice should always be obtained before applying any information to particular circumstances.